The river is calm this morning, almost deceptively so. Its surface barely ripples as the first light of day spreads across the water, turning it the color of pale copper. Along the wide banks, ships sit low and heavy, their hulls scarred by months at sea. They have come from places most people here will never see: Brazil, Goa. Macau routes traced not by roads but by salt, storms, and patience. Their sails hang loose now, breathless after the long crossing, while rope creaks softly as the tide nudges them closer to the stone quays of Lisbon. No one gathers in awe. No crowd gasps. Dock workers move with practiced rhythm, boots scraping against wet stone, hands rough and certain. Crates are hauled up, barrels rolled, ledgers opened. Somewhere inside the holds, wrapped in layers of wood and cloth, lie fortunes measured not in coins, but in influence. Gold dust sealed in chests, ivory, sugar, spices whose scent will soon drift into the city's market. Enough wealth passes through this river in a single week to bankroll wars, build palaces, or buy entire towns elsewhere in Europe. Here, it is simply another delivery. The Tagus has seen this before. It has carried Phoenicians, Romans, Moorish fleets, and now the ships of a global empire. It accepts them all with the same indifferent patience. As the sun climbs higher, light spills across the tiled rooftops rising from the shore, climbing the hills in uneven layers. Lisbon reveals itself slowly, like a city waking without enthusiasm. Bells toll from distant churches, their sound travelling over water and stone, weaving through narrow streets still damp from the night. The smell reaches the docks before the noise fully does. Salt and tar mix with fish, smoke, and something sour, something older. The river brings wealth, but it also brings rot seaweed caught between stones, refuse tossed carelessly. The residue of thousands of lives pressed tightly together. Gulls circle overhead, screaming as they dive for scraps. Their cries blend with shouted orders, the slap of waves against hulls, the dull thud of cargo meeting ground. Men work here who have no claim to what they touch. Their hands lift gold without ever holding it. Their backs bend beneath crates of silk they will never wear, spices they will never taste. They know the weight of wealth intimately, not as comfort, but as strain in the shoulders, as calluses split open by rope. Payment comes later, in small coins counted carefully, already spoken for by rent bread, and wine thin enough to barely warm the body. Beyond the docks the city waits. Lisbon is arranged not neatly, but urgently, as if built faster than it could think. Streets rise sharply from the river, bending around hills, breaking into stairways, narrowing into alleys that trap sound and smell alike. Buildings lean toward one another, upper floors jutting out as though seeking balance or companionship. Clothes hang from windows like tired flags, fluttering slightly in the morning air. The wealth that enters by sea does not flow evenly upward. It pools in certain places behind carved doors, within courtyards hidden from the street, beneath ceilings painted and gilded until they shimmer even in low light. Merchants' houses stand taller, their facades better kept, their windows glazed. Inside, rooms are layered with rugs from distant lands, cabinets filled with porcelain that arrived by the same water. Now lapping at the docks, yet even here, in the richest city on earth, water itself remains a daily concern. There are no pipes humming quietly behind walls, no taps turned thoughtlessly. The river is not for drinking. Fresh water must be carried, fetched from fountains scattered like precious punctuation marks across the city. Already, figures move through the streets with buckets and barrels, preparing for the long walk uphill. Wealth does not spare anyone from thirst. The king's palace glitters somewhere above it all, its windows catching the sun. From a distance, it appears serene, orderly, untouched by the clamor below. Inside, Courtiers will soon walk polished floors, discussing shipments, alliances distant. Colonies whose names sound like abstractions, rather than places where people live and die. Decisions made their ripple outward, shaping lives that will never cross. Those halls, down by the river, a chest is opened under watchful eyes. The lid creaks back to reveal dull yellow metal, heavy and unadorned. No one gasps. A clerk notes figures in ink, his H, and steady the numbers already expected. Gold has lost its ability to surprise here. It arrives too often, in too great quantities. Abundance dulls wonder, as surely as poverty dulls hope. As the morning advances, the city grows louder. Carts begin their slow climb up the hills, wheels grinding against stone. Vendors call out from corners, advertising bread still warm from ovens, fish caught before dawn. The smells shift as kitchens awaken, smoke curling upward to join the haze already settling between buildings. Somewhere a child laughs. Somewhere else an argument flares and fades just as quickly. The river remains constant through it all, bearing witness without judgment. Ships unload, then wait again, preparing to leave with holds filled, differently, with wine, with letters, with the promise of return. The tide turns, as it always does. Fortunes that seemed immovable begin, quietly, to drift away above the docks. Lisbon breathes in its own rhythm. It is a city balanced on contrast, unimaginable wealth beside daily hardship, global reach alongside intimate struggle. Gold crosses its thresholds, but so does hunger. Silk brushes past bare skin. The world arrives here, compressed into crates and cargo lists, into rumors and accents and unfamiliar prayers murmured. By sailors passing through, by mid-morning the first ship is empty enough to ride higher in the water. Its work here is done. Another waits behind it, and another beyond that. The river will not rest. Neither will he city. In this place, where the world's wealth arrives by sea, life continues not in awe, but in endurance shaped by tides, carried forward by habit, and held together by the quiet understanding that tomorrow more ship will come. The city is already awake before the light fully arrives. It does not rise gently from sleep, stretching and yawning. It snaps into motion, as if rest were an inconvenience briefly tolerated and now firmly dismissed. Even in the deepest hours of night, Lisbon never truly quiets. Somewhere a door creaks open. Somewhere else footsteps echo on stone. Now, as dawn approaches, all those scattered sounds gather momentum. The first bells begin before sunrise. One church answers another, their calls overlapping and drifting across the hills. The sound slips through narrow streets and thin walls, settling into rooms where people have slept lightly, if at all. Bells are not alarms here. They are reminders of time, of duty, of order imposed on a city that would otherwise dissolve into noise. In small rooms, tucked beneath sloping roofs, bodies shift on straw and wool. Sleep releases its hold reluctantly. The air indoors is stale, heavy with the lingering warmth of many breaths and the faint smell of yesterday's work. Windows are small, often little more than holes cut into thick walls. Through them, a grey-blue light creeps in, revealing the outlines of beams, hanging clothes, and tired faces. Getting up is not dramatic. It is practiced, a careful swing-o. Legs off a low bed, feet meeting cold stone that steals warmth instantly. Fingers fumble for clothing laid out the night before, not because of habit alone, but because darkness leaves no room for searching. Linen shirts are pulled on, stiff where they dried poorly. Trousers slide up, fabric rough against skin. Nothing fits quite right, but nothing is meant to. There is no lingering, no sitting at the edge of the bed to gather thoughts. Morning does not allow reflection. It demands movement. In shared rooms, people dress quietly. aware of one another's presence without speaking. Snores fade into coughs. Someone mutters a prayer under their breath. Another rubs eyes, already red from yesterday's smoke and strain. Outside, the streets begin to change character. What was shadowed and uncertain becomes familiar again. Oil lamps flicker out as daylight takes over their work. Doors open inward, spilling people into alleyways barely wide enough for two to pass. The city exhales body servants, porters, apprentices, sellers, each absorbed into their own routine, each carrying the weight of the day ahead. Lisbon's hills ensure that no morning is gentle. Every path is either rising or falling, and most are uneven, their stones polished smooth by centuries of feet. Water trickles along shallow grooves cut into the street, carrying away whatever was thrown out overnight. The smell shifts as the air stirs, blending dampness with smoke, waste, bread, and the faint sweetness of roasting chiage. S-nuts from a distant vendor already at work. From upper windows, shutters open, some cautiously, some thrown wide with impatience. Faces appear briefly, scanning the street below, gauging the day's weather and mood. Above, laundry stirs, ropes creaking softly. Somewhere, a woman shakes a rug, releasing dust that floats lazily downward. Before settling again, shouts begin to cut through the general hum. Not angry, not urgent, just necessary. Greetings exchanged without stopping. Warnings called out as barrels are rolled from doorways into the street. A boy darts between adults barefoot, carrying a message or a basket, his path instinctive and precise. In the kitchens of larger houses, fires are already lit. Sparks leap up chimneys, adding to the haze that clings low over the city before the sun climbs high enough to burn it away. Pots are set on iron hooks. Water, hauled earlier or saved from the night before, is poured carefully. Nothing is wasted. Every drop has weight. Animals announce themselves as well. Donkeys bray, impatient to be loaded. Chickens protest as they are gathered. Dogs roam freely, navigating the crowd with ease, pausing only when a familiar hand reaches down. Even rats retreat more decisively now, slipping back into cracks and shadows as human movement reclaims the streets. The river below reflects the morning sky, brighter now, busier too. Masts sway gently. Crews move across decks, preparing for departures or unloading the last of the cargo. The smell the water carries inland, mixing with everything else, reminding the city of its source and its dependence for those who live here. Waking is less a moment than a continuation. The night never fully erased the day before it. Fatigue lingers in shoulders and knees. Yesterday's worries carry over intact. There is comfort, though, in the predictability. The same stairs creak in the same places. The same corner catches the wind. The same church bell rings at the same time, anchoring life to a rhythm that feels immovable. As the sun finally clears the rooftops, Lisbon settles into its daytime pace, not calmer but more purposeful. The early chaos organizes itself into streams of movement, each flowing toward work, obligation, survival. The city did not rest, and it does not pause to acknowledge the new day. It simply continues, layered with sound and motion, carrying everyone forward. Whether they are ready or not, youth in this city does not feel light. It does not stretch endlessly ahead, full of open choices and gentle mistakes. It is compact, compressed by necessity, shaped early by the spaces where it is allowed to exist. A young life here is lived inside walls, built by other people's success measured against standards set by fortunes it will never touch. Morning finds the young already useful. Childhood fades quietly, not with ceremony, but with expectation. By the time the sun clears the hills, hands have been put to work, backs already familiar with strain. There is no sea, Leerline marking when play ended and responsibility began. It simply happened, somewhere between carrying messages and carrying burdens that did not belong to you, inside wealthy houses, Youth is everywhere and nowhere at once. It moves silently through corridors, up and down stairs, across kitchens and courtyards. It listens more than it speaks. It learns the sound of different footsteps, the meaning hidden in tone rather than words. A raised voice might signal irritation. A pause might mean something far worse. These lessons are absorbed early and never written down. The rooms tell their own stories. In public spaces, wealth announces itself confidently. Floors are swept clean each morning. Light reflects off polished wood and brass. Fabrics soften footsteps. Paintings watch from walls, their subjects frozen in expressions of certainty. A young servant passes through these rooms carefully, eyes lowered, aware of how easily something fragile could shatter under a careless movement. Beyond those spaces lie narrower corridors and lower ceilings. Here the air is warmer, thicker. This is where youth sleeps, eats and waits. Beds are shared or taken in turns. Privacy is a concept spoken about elsewhere. Belongings fit into small bundles, easily moved, easily lost. What matters most is not what is owned, but what can be carried without being noticed. Work fills the hours between waking and sleep, fetching water, carrying trays, sweeping floors that will be dirtied again with an M. Inuits. Tasks are repeated until they lose edges and become motion. A young body adapts quickly. Muscles harden, skin toughens. Pain becomes background noise, something acknowledged only when it grows sharp. Enough to demand attention. There is an odd intimacy in serving wealth. You see it up close, in ways its owners rarely do. You notice the excess food scraped into waste, the garments worn only once, before being set aside, the coins exchanged casually for conveniences. At the same time, you learn how little of it is meant for you. Proximity does not grant access. It only sharpens awareness. Yet envy does not always follow. There is fatigue, yes, and resignation, but also a quiet understanding that this is simply how the city works. Some lives rise on tides of gold. Others are anchored, steady but unmoving. Youth learns this early, absorbing it as fact rather than injustice, because questioning it offers no relief. Moments of stillness arrive unexpectedly. Standing in a doorway while waiting for instruction. Pausing at a window to watch sunlight catch dust in the air. These fragments are brief, but they belong entirely to the one who notices them. In those moments, youth feels itself not as labor, but as presence. Conversation with other young workers happen in half sentences and shared glances. There is comfort in familiarity. Stories are exchanged quietly at night, lying close enough to hear each other breathe. Tales of home, of villages near the sea or fields far inland, spoken with a softness that suggests both longing and acceptance. Not everyone remembers home clearly anymore. Learning happens constantly, though rarely by design. Hands learn how to balance weight efficiently. Eyes learn where not to look. Ears learn to catch instructions delivered under breath. Mistakes are remembered vividly, their lessons carved deeper than praise ever could be. Praise, when it comes, is brief and functional. Time moves differently for the young inside other people's wealth. Days blur together, marked not by dates, but by routines. Growth is measured in endurance rather than years. Shoulders broaden, voices deepen. Childhood disappears without farewell. Still, there is a resilience that forms quietly. A sense of self built not on ownership, but on capability. On knowing how to navigate spaces that were never designed for you. On understanding the hidden mechanisms that keep the city moving. Wealth may define the rooms, but youth defines how to move through them. As night approaches again, the young return to their small corners of the city, tired in a way that feels permanent. They lie down surrounded by the muffled sounds of a house settling, of distant laughter from rooms above. Sleep comes quickly, heavy and necessary. Tomorrow will be the same. And in that sameness, life continues, shaped within other people's prosperity. Steady and unseen, sleep arrives without ceremony here. It is not invited, not prepared for with softness or silence. It comes bika. The body can no longer hold itself upright because exhaustion presses down heavier than thought. When the day finally loosens its grip, people lie where they must and rest the way they can. The bed is not a bed in the way the word suggests elsewhere. It is straw packed tightly into a rough sack that crackles softly when weight settles onto it. Each stalk presses back, never quite yielding, always reminding the body of its presence. Over time, the straw shifts and breaks, creating hollows shaped by years of different sleepers. No two nights ever feel exactly the same, yet none feel truly comfortable. The smell is familiar and unavoidable. Old sweat, dust, something faintly animal, something damp that never fully dries. It clings to the fabric and seeps into clothing, into hair, into skin. Even after washing, the scent lingers, as if the bed itself leaves a mark. At first it is noticed constantly. Later, it becomes part of the background, like the sound of breathing. A blanket, if there is one, offers more symbolism than warmth. Wool scratched and thinned by use is pulled up instinctively, though it does little to stop the chill. In cooler months, the cold slips through gaps effortlessly, settling into bones. Bodies curl inward without instruction, seeking whatever heat they can preserve. Sleep becomes shallow, layered with small awakenings prompted by cold feet or stiff shoulders. Beneath it all, the floor waits. Stone, laid centuries ago, holds on to the night as if freeze, full of the coming day. Even after hours of daylight, it releases cold slowly. Bare feet meet it with a quiet intake of breath every morning. The shock never fully disappears, only dulls with repetition. Stone does not care how tired you are. Rooms are small, carved out of larger structures without much thought for comfort. Ceilings slope or press low. Beams cut across space unpredictably. Air moves poorly, trapped unless a window is open, and even then it brings little relief. Windows are narrow, placed high, admitting light reluctantly. They frame only fragments of sky, never enough to feel expansive. Privacy is a luxury not afforded here. Bodies share space closely, separated by inches rather than walls. Movements are learned carefully, adjusted, to avoid waking others unnecessarily. Someone turns over, straw rustles. Someone sighs in sleep. A cough echoes louder than intended. These sounds are intimate, unavoidable, and strangely reassuring. Silence would feel wrong. Belongings are few and kept close. A spare shirt folded at the foot of the bed. Shoes placed carefully against the wall. Everything has a place because there is nowhere else for it to go. Disorder creates obstacles. At night, the room becomes a landscape navigated by memory alone. Cold behaves differently indoors. It does not rush in dramatically. It settles, it creeps upward from the floor, clings to walls, presses against skin slowly, until it becomes part of the body's awareness. Breath fogs faintly on particularly cold nights. Fingers numb slightly, then adjust. Sleep adapts around discomfort rather than escaping it. There is no ceremony to bedtime. No candle lit for relaxation. Candles cost money, and light is rationed carefully. Darkness is accepted quickly. Eyes closed because there is nothing left to see. Thoughts blur, not from peace, but from fatigue. Dreams come easily, shaped by repetition and routine. Sometimes rain finds its way in, not as a flood, but as dampness creeping along walls, as moisture softening straw, as the smell deepening. Roofs are repaired when they fail visibly, not before. Until then, people adjust. A shift of position, a garment placed strategically to absorb drips. Morning will come regardless. The stone floor listens to everything. Footsteps above, conversations muffled through walls, laughter drifting down from rooms where warmth is taken for granted. The floor does not respond. It remains unchanged, bearing weight year after year, indifferent to who sleeps above it. There is a strange equality here. Wealth might dictate what happens in rooms higher up, but on these floors everyone feels the same cold. The body presses against straw, against stone, and the experience is shared across countless lives, layered through time. Generations have slept this way, rising in the same stiffness, stepping onto the same chill. Morning always feels too soon. Even when sleep is deep, it is never long enough. The body resists waking, clinging to warmth that barely exists. Eyes open reluctantly, limbs protest. For a moment there is stillness, a brief pause where the day has not yet reclaimed its claim. Then movement begins. Straw shifts. Blankets are folded or shaken out. Feet meet stone. The cold bites again, sharp and immediate, a reminder that rest was temporary. The floor does not soften with familiarity. It remains firm, grounding, unavoidable. Over time, bodies learn. They toughen. The shock dulls. The straw becomes familiar terrain. Discomfort becomes expected, then unremarkable. There is no resentment left for it, only acceptance. This is where sleep happens. This is how rest is taken, and somehow, within these limits, people endure. They rise, step forward, and carry the day with them, leaving behind the faint impressions of warmth on straw and stone that will vanish long before night returns. Clothing here is not chosen. It is accepted. Each morning begins with the same quiet negotiation between body and fabric, between what is available and what is required. There is no mirror to consult, no question of appearance. What matters is coverage, warmth, and whether the seams will hold through another long day. Garments wait where they were left the night before, hung on nails driven into the wall or folded carefully to keep them from the damp. Linen shirts are first, pale once, now softened and dulled by years of washing. The cloth is thin in places, almost translucent where it has been worn smooth. Patches sit proudly at elbows and shoulders, reminders of hands that chose repair over replacement. Pulling the shirt over the head is a practiced motion. Arms slide through sleeves that have learned the exact shape of the body. The fabric is cool at first, then quickly warmed. There is comfort in this familiarity, in knowing exactly how it will sit, where it will rub, where it will loosen as the day goes on. Trousers come next, heavier, more forgiving. Their original color is a matter of memory rather than sight. Brown, perhaps, or gray. Now they exist somewhere in between, stained by work and weather. The waist is secured with a simple tie, adjusted by instinct rather than thought. Too loose invites trouble. Too tight steals breath on the hills. A vest, if there is one, carries a story. It may once have belonged to someone else older, wealthier, briefly larger. It hangs slightly wrong, but it adds a layer against the morning chill. Buttons do not always match. Sometimes one is missing entirely, replaced by a knot or pin. These details are noted only in passing, then forgotten. Shoes are the most important choice, and the most limited. Leather stiffened by age waits by the wall. Soles are thin, shaped by countless steps over stone. Putting them on is deliberate. Feet ease in slowly, testing for cracks that might rub raw by midday. Laces are tightened just enough. Too much pressure becomes pain later. Stockings are pulled up carefully. Fingers smoothing them to avoid folds that could blister. Every small discomfort ignored now. multiplies with distance. Experience teaches this more effectively than instruction ever could. There is no sense of transformation in dressing, no feeling of becoming someone else. Clothes do not grant identity here, they enable function. Once dressed, the body is simply ready to be used. The self settles into its role without comment. In richer parts of the house, clothing means something different. Fine fabrics are chosen deliberately, colors signaling taste and status. Silk whispers when it moves. Wool is soft, dyed deep and even. Buttons are decorative as well as practical. Dressing there is an act observed by others, a quiet performance before the day begins. But in narrow rooms and low ceilings, dressing is private and efficient. It happens mostly in the dark. Hands know where to reach. There is no wasted movement. Light, when it arrives, is incidental rather than necessary. The smell of clothing is unavoidable. Smoke from the kitchen fire clings to everything. Sweat lingers, no matter how carefully garments are aired. Rain leaves its mark for days. These scents are layered, familiar, rarely noticed unless something changes. As bodies finish dressing, the room fills briefly with movement. Someone adjusts a sleeve. Another ties a knot. Shoes scrape against stone. A quiet cough breaks the silence. No one speaks much. Words are saved for later, when breath is not already spent on preparation. Once dressed, there is no returning to bed. The body has crossed a line. Warmth must now be maintained through motion. Lingering invites stiffness. So people step out into corridors, into stairwells where wood creaks. Predictably beneath feet, the stairs themselves demand attention. Steps are worn shallow, uneven from centuries of use. Each one is known. There is a rhythm to descending that matches the pace of waking. Hand brushes the wall lightly for balance. Weight shifts automatically. Outside the room, others are already moving, some fully dressed, some still fastening ties or smoothing shirts as they walk. The house awakens in layers, like breath drawn slowly and released all at once. Clothing meets the morning air, and the contrast is immediate. Coolness slips through fabric, reminding the body of the season. October mornings carry a particular edge, not sharp, but insistent. It settles in until movement pushes it away. The city accepts these figures without comment. Dressed plainly, they blend into the stream of life, flowing down stairways and into streets. No one looks twice. Clothing here is a kind of camouflage, signaling belonging through sameness. There is pride quietly held in garments that last, in repairs done neatly, in shoes that survive another month. These victories are small, but they accumulate. They mean fewer coins spent, fewer worries carried. By the time the sun reaches the streets, dressing is already forgotten. The body moves as it needs to. Fabric stretches and creases, adjusting to labor. Sleeves are pushed up. Vests loosen. Shoes soften slightly with warmth. What began as a careful ritual becomes invisible. Clothing does its work without drawing attention, absorbing effort and friction so the body can continue. It does not promise comfort or beauty. It promises endurance, and that is enough. Before the city fully stirs, the household is already alive. Not loudly, not all at once, but in careful stages, like embers coaxed back into flame. Darkness still presses against the windows, yet movement has begun inside, guided by memory rather than sight. The kitchen is the first place to wake. It always is. Even before voices rise elsewhere in the house, the hearth claims attention. Ashes are stirred, old embers uncovered, breath blown gently until a faint glow answers back. A piece of kindling catches, then another. Soon the fire breathes steadily, casting low orange light that softens the hard angle. Of stone and iron, pots hang from hooks above the flames, blackened by years of use. Their shapes are familiar, trusted. One is filled with water, poured carefully to avoid waste. Another waits empty, patient. The fire pops quietly, a sound so constant it fades into the background, noticed. Only in its absence, a figure moves near the hearth, steady and unhurried. Age is present in the lines of the face and the way the body conserves motion, but the hands remain sure. This person has risen before everyone else for longer than anyone can remember. Time has shaped the routine, but tea has not altered it. Elsewhere in the house, doors open softly. Footsteps cross floors in patterns learned through repetition. Someone descends the stairs, avoiding the step that groans too loudly. Someone else pauses, listening, then follows. These movements are coordinated without conversation, a shared understanding. Formed over years, the air inside carries layers of smell. Cold stone, smoke just beginning to warm, leftover food from the night before. It is not unpleasant, just dense, full of information. The body reads it instinctively, adjusting expectations for the day ahead. Water is fetched or prepared early, measured carefully. Every task that depends on it must be planned. Washing, cooking, cleaning, all balanced against what can be carried or stored. The household's rhythm bends around this necessity without complaint. In the upper rooms, those who own the house remain asleep a little longer. Their rest is deeper and interrupted by preparation. Their day will begin after this unseen labor has already smoothed the path ahead of them. By the time they stir, warmth will be waiting. Clothing rustles quietly as servants dress in near darkness. Sleeves are pulled on, ties secured. No one lingers. There is a sense of urgency without anxiety, as if the morning itself were a narrow window. That must not be missed. In corners and passageways, small exchanges happen. A nod, a brief word, a reminder passed along in a whisper. These are not conversations, but confirmations. One knows where they are needed. The fire grows stronger. Light reaches farther into the room, revealing chipped stone, worn tables, a floor polished smooth by countless feet. Shadows retreat, but do not disappear. They simply reposition themselves, clinging to ceilings and corners. Sounds from outside begin to filter in. A distant shout, the scrape of a cart, the first bell calling the faithful to early prayer. These noises are acknowledged subconsciously, woven into the household's own tempo. Food preparation begins in earnest. Bread is checked, broken if necessary. Simple ingredients are combined with practiced efficiency. Nothing elaborate is attempted at this hour. The goal is nourishment, not pleasure. A kettle is set closer to the fire. Steam lifts slowly, curling upward before vanishing. Someone stirs without looking, guided by the feel of resistance against the spoon. The motion is steady, almost meditative. As the sky lightens imperceptibly, the house feels fuller, more bodies moving, more breath warming the air. The quiet hum of labor settles into a comfortable groove. There is no rush, but no wasted time. Upstairs, a door closes softly. Downstairs, another opens. Trays are arranged. Surfaces wiped. Small adjustments made to ensure nothing is out of place. These details matter. Even if they go unnoticed, the household exists in this suspended moment between night and day, functioning as a single organism. Each person performs their part. Not for recognition, but back. As the system depends on it. If one element falters, the imbalance is felt immediately. By the time the first rays of sunlight touch the highest windows, much has already been accomplished. Heat fills the kitchen. Order has been imposed. The house is ready to present itself. Those who wake later will step into a world that appears effortlessly prepared. They will not see the darkness it emerged from, or the quiet coordination that shaped it. The household before sunrise dissolves into the background, its work complete, its presence invisible once again, but for a brief while. In the half-light and warmth of the early fire, it exists, fully steady, purposeful, and essential. Water is never taken for granted here. Even in the richest city on earth, where gold glints in windows and ships arrive daily with treasures from every corner of the globe, clean water is rare. It does not run through pipes behind walls. It does not appear magically in kitchens. Instead, it waits in fountains scattered across the city, and it is the task of countless hands to carry it home each day. Morning begins with the weight of necessity. Buckets are prepared, their wooden yokes polished smooth by use. 2 pails hang from either end, empty now, waiting to be filled. The handles are carved to fit the shoulders, but even so, they will bite into flesh after only a few steps. Experience teaches how to distribute weight, how to breathe against strain, how to pace oneself so that aches will not grow too acute. Italy, the streets are already stirring. Lisbon is built on hills, and each fountain sits at its own level. The alarm, the neighborhood where the city leans toward the river, requires a climb that begins almost immediately. Narrow alleys twist unpredictably. Steps appear without warning, and passages sometimes dead-end, forcing detours. Every young servant learns these paths quickly. Memory and intuition are as important as strength. Noise surrounds the journey. Doors open into the street, spilling shouts and laughter. Chickens scatter in small flocks. Horses bray, impatient for space. Merchants' carts rattle along stone worn smooth by centuries. And always, from windows above, comes the occasional warning shout, "Agua vai." Water goes. Residents lean out, tossing chamber pots into the street below. The call is both polite and necessary. A bucket of fresh water must be kept upright, while below, the city's own waste courses freely. At the fountain, activity swirls. Other residents have arrived ahead, each with their own rhythm. Some wait politely, others push and maneuver, eyes alert for the quickest chance to fill their pails. Water splashes and drips, mingling with stone. The sound is constant, clinking wood, liquid slapping bucket sides, voices negotiating space. Even the fountain itself seems alive, as though aware of its role. In sustaining so many lives, filling the buckets requires skill. Tilt too sharply and water spills. Lean too far, and the yoke might tip. Hands. Shoulders work in concert, balancing effort with caution. The cold of the water bites through skin at first, then numbs slightly, forcing attention into the task at hand. There is no room for distraction. Mistakes mean wasted effort. And every drop counts. Once full, the return journey begins. Every step is heavier now. Every incline a challenge. The stone beneath feet is slippery from overnight rain or the puddles left by those who came before. Muscles strain against weight, shoulders protest, but the body has learned. Each movement is practiced, calibrated. Paths are memorized to minimize jostling, to keep water from spilling. The route back is as familiar as home. And yet, every trip is a small battle. Along the way, observation continues. The city does not pause for those carrying water. Merchants' doors open, revealing tables already stacked with goods. Children dart between legs. Dogs trot alongside, sniffing curiously. The scent of baking bread drifts upward from an oven. All of it passes unnoticed except in the periphery. Attention must remain on the burden carried, on the rhythm of movement, on the day just beginning. At the house, unloading is as deliberate as filling. Buckets are set down carefully. Water is poured into storage containers, rationed, saved. Not a drop is wasted, even when the kitchen seems well supplied. Hygiene, cooking, and cleaning all depend on the discipline of these early hours. A single spill could compromise the household's delicate balance. For the day, children watch, learning. They mimic the motions quietly, internalizing the rhythm before they are entrusted with the task themselves. Strength and precision develop in stages, often unnoticed by those observing from the comfort of warmer, higher rooms. Responsibility comes early, accompanied by the awareness that failure is visible and consequential. By the time the sun climbs above the rooftops, the early laborers have returned from fountains near and far. Their bodies bear the marks of effort, damp shirts, red hands, aching shoulders. Yet they are not defeated. The city demands endurance, and they respond. The wealth that arrives daily cannot ease this burden. Gold may fill the streets, but water sustains life. Through this daily pilgrimage, the city maintains its rhythm. Wealth glitters in the merchant houses. Churches gleam in sunlight. Yet, beneath it all, water flows only because hands will carry it over stone and upstairs, past hazards and warnings, for hours each day. Life depends on repetition, skill, and perseverance, and in the quiet moments, when the buckets are finally emptied and shoulders drop their load, there is a small satisfaction, not pride, not triumph, but the simple knowledge that the task is complete for now. Another day will come, another walk, another fountain. The endless search continues, as it always has, shaping bodies, routines, and the very rhythm of Lisbon itself. The streets rise before you even as the day begins. Lisbon is no flat city, nor does it pretend to be. 7 hills fold into one another like layered sheets, each slope offering its own challenge to those who traverse it. Walking here is never casual. Every step demands attention. Every incline tests endurance, and every alleyway hides the potential to surprise or mislead. The alarm district, oldest of all, begins near the river. Its foundations were laid centuries ago, first by Moors who knew how to shape stone and passageways to advantage. Alleys twist unpredictably. Staircases appear without warning, and narrow bridges link buildings so close together that their upper floors nearly touch. Even those born here find themselves lost at times, guided only by memory and instinct. The city resists straight lines, resists control. Stone beneath feet has been polished smooth by generations, yet it is far from uniform. Sections are jagged, worn by weather, and slick from water dripping from above. Footfalls echo differently with every step, each pattern a minor puzzle for balance. Carrying a load water, firewood, or groceries demands careful calculation, a slow negotiation with gravity. To misstep is to risk injury, or worse, losing what you carried. Windows open above, and the city speaks through them. Shouts, laughter, the clatter of morning tasks, the occasional admonishment all drift down into alleys that curve unpredictably. Laundry flaps on lines strung across narrow passages, colors muted by age, but moving as though alive in the breeze. Every scent and sound becomes part of the terrain, signaling what lies ahead. Steps are everywhere. Some carved into the stone centuries ago, others built later, uneven and crooked. A person learns where to step without thinking, a silent groove that promises traction, a loose stone to avoid, a step that creaks if pressed at the wrong angle. Repetition turns knowledge into instinct, and instinct becomes survival. Merchants' doors line the streets intermittently. Inside, the rich move in their own rhythm, unaware of the intricate ballet of labor above and below them. Outside, street life flourishes. Children dart between legs. Sellers call out in sharp voices. Animals negotiate their place alongside people. The hills carry sound up and down, layering everything into a continuous hum that follows you. As you climb, the slopes are tiring in a way that is persistent rather than immediate. The body adapts slowly, calves tighten, shoulders lean forward slightly for balance. Feet grip where stone threatens to slip, Breath comes in measured rhythm. On steeper inclines, hands brush against walls or railings, finding support in the architecture itself. Corner appears suddenly, revealing what was hidden: a small courtyard, a fountain, a vendor setting out wares. Stairs sometimes vanish as if swallowed by the stone, forcing detours through twisting lanes. Directions are not given in blocks or street names, but in landmarks: a worn statue, a tilted doorway, a patched roof that leans. Just so, above, windows frame scenes of domestic life. A woman shakes dust from a rug. A child peers down, laughing at someone below. Laundry swings lazily in the breeze, and smoke rises from chimneys, softening the morning light. These glimpses are fleeting, yet they mark the path, signaling that life continues on the hills. The city's incline shapes interaction. Conversations are brief, gestures amplified by the climb. Children chase one another up steps, their laughter sharp and rhythmic. A neighbor calls across an alley, voice carrying farther than expected. Horses pause mid-slope, shifting weight carefully to avoid slipping. Each element must be accounted for when moving through this landscape. Time here is marked by effort as much as by sunlight. A climb that takes a few minutes for the strong feels endless to the unpracticed. The weight of water or goods multiplies the difficulty, creating a quiet, constant exhaustion that accumulates over hours and days. Endurance is measured less in speed than in steadiness. Even at the highest points, the city reveals itself. From the top of a stairway, rooftops cascade down in uneven layers toward the river. The smell of baking bread drifts up from below, mingling with smoke and distant salt from the water. The visual perspective is rewarding, but the climb is never complete. The next slope awaits. The next set of narrow streets demands attention. Those who walk the hills repeatedly learn to anticipate them. Muscle memory dictates the body's responses. Eyes scan for hazards. Hands reach instinctively for support, and the rhythm of breath syncs with steps. It is a quiet mastery, gained through repetition and necessity. Despite the labor, there is beauty. Stone worn smooth by centuries holds history in every crack. The layout, so confusing to outsiders, offers protection and shade. Wind threads between buildings, cooling the city in summer and stirring life in alleyways. Sunlight catches the edges of roofs and steps, painting the stone in subtle gold tones. By midday, the hills are alive. The morning rush flows into steady circulation. People continue their tasks. Goods are delivered. Chores completed. Children play in safe corners. The climb has shaped their day already, conditioning the body, mind, and rhythm. Walking the hills of Lisbon is never simply movement. It is adaptation, negotiation, and observation. Every step is a decision, every incline a challenge. The city is demanding, yet generous in the knowledge it imparts to those willing to listen to its stone, its stairs, its alleys, and its wine. Those who master the hills learn more than paths. They learn endurance, patience, and the unspoken pulse of life in the city that never truly rests. The city speaks in a language all its own. In Lisbon, every morning arrives with a symphony of sound, a layering of smells, and warnings shouted down from windows high above. Here, life is orchestrated not just by human effort, but by the senses, constantly tuned to the rhythm of the streets, the alleys, and the hills. Footstep echo across stone, some heavy with purpose, others light and uncertain. Every set of shoes, boots, or bare feet carries a story: the hurried steps of a servant racing to fetch water, the measured pace of a merchant inspecting goods, the playful dash of a child weaving through legs. The sound of movement tells more than one word ever could. Who is coming? Who is leaving? Who carries weight? Who does not? From above, voices call down, a system of warnings and instructions that shapes the flow of life. Agua vai! Water goes. The cry slices through the morning air, short and sharp. It is polite, almost formal, yet carries urgency. Those below know what it means. Buckets, barrels, laundry, and sometimes chamber pots tumble freely toward the street. Heads duck, arms reach, bodies shift instinctively. A moment of inattention can lead to soaked clothing, spilt water, or worse. The warnings are not limited to objects. Occasionally, a shout signals a dispute, an argument over space in a narrow alley, or a complaint about a stolen loaf or a displaced crate. Each tone is learned, recognizable, carrying a meaning beyond words. The young and experienced alike move with awareness, reading not only the words but the cadence, the volume, the inflection, and the source. Smells arrive in waves, equally informative. The river brings salt and fish, mingling with the damp scent of stone and the faintly sweet aroma of bread billet. King in ovens. Smoke curls from chimneys, adding a dry, acrid note. Waste, discarded carelessly from upper windows, adds its own pungency. The combination is overwhelming to anyone unaccustomed. But for those born here, it is a map, a guide to life's next steps. Each scent has place and purpose. Animals contribute their own layer. Dogs pad along streets silently, stopping only when food or attention requires. Chickens peck and cluck, asserting territory. Horses and donkeys shift impatiently, their hooves clattering on worn stone. Even the wind carries its warnings, shifting scents or sounds that indicate rain, the tide of the river, or someone moving hurriedly in another alley. From the heights of buildings, residents maintain a constant awareness. Windows open, shutters creak, hands toss down warnings or instructions. It is not malicious or careless. It is a city's adaptation to its density and unpredictability. The inhabitants rely on gravity to carry messages. Every object dropped, every shout cast downward, is part of a delicate communication system. The young who walk these streets learn to interpret the full range of signals. A sudden shout, a change in tone, the smell of smoke or food, the shift of an animal all carry meaning. Movement is guided by what is heard and smelled as much as by what is seen. Heads tilt, shoulders shift, arms extend. Balance and caution are not optional. They are survival. There is rhythm in the chaos. Each morning brings repetition and repeti. Tie-in builds expectation. The first shout of aguavai signals a rush of ducking and stepping aside. The first waft of baking bread reminds children to follow their mothers for breakfast. The smell of damp stone tells everyone where puddles or spills are likely to appear. Through experience, the city becomes readable, almost predictable, even if it refuses to be tamed. Even the silence between sounds carries weight. Pauses in shouts, in movement, in odor are noticed. They signal that the moment is fleeting, that attention must be renewed. A misstep in reading these cues can be costly, a bump, a spill, or a collision in the narrow passages. Observation becomes instinct, instinct becomes reflex. The streets, alleys, and stairways seem alive because of this constant sensory dialogue. The city communicates in layered textures, and life here depends on responding appropriately. Those who do not pay attention quickly fall behind, spill their water, drop their goods, or stumble on the uneven stone. Awareness is protection. It is survival. By midday, the sounds and smells shift slightly. The river carries more traffic. Merchants' voices grow sharper. Cooking fires intensify, and the odors mix differently as the sun warms stone and air. But the lessons of the morning remain. The city has spoken, its warnings delivered, its rhythms established. To move safely through it is to listen, breathe, and adjust continuously. In Lisbon, the balance between danger and routine is delicate. Every sound is a message, every smell a guide, every call from above a signal that life continues in order, though not in silence. Those who navigate it well learn that survival is as much about perception as strength, as much about attention as speed, And when night approaches again, when the calls quiet and the alleys empty, the echoes of morning remain. The memory of shouted warnings, of smells carried on the wind, and of the city's constant presence lingers. For those who walk these streets daily, the lessons of sound, smell, and observation are never forgotten. They become part of the rhythm of life, a pulse that continues long after the day has passed. The markets awake with a bustle that feels almost alive. Long before the sun reaches its highest point, merchants are already shouting, balancing goods on wooden carts, setting out baskets brimming with fruits, vegetables, spices, and more exotic treasures. The streets around the squares fill with movement, a flowing tide of buyers, sellers, and those simply passing through. In Lisbon, the markets are both a spectacle of wealth and a display of daily struggle. The richness of the city is on full display here. Gold and silver glint on the coins exchanged. Imported silks catch sunlight as they hang from wooden frames, and porcelain and glassware are arranged meticulously, delicate and shining. Spices from distant lands perfume the air, cinnamon, clove, pepper, each scent carried by the slightest breeze, hinting at the long journeys that brought them to this city by the sea. It is a feast for the senses, a reminder of Lisbon's wealth and the reach of its trade networks, yet wealth sits beside hunger. Children weave through crowds with empty stomachs, eyes alert for scraps or discarded pieces of bread. Young servants carry baskets on errands, trading labor for morsels, while the poorest push through throngs, hoping for coin or attention from those more fortunate. The contrast is immediate and unavoidable. Silks flutter beside patched shirts, golden coins beside calloused palms. Everyone knows their place, yet everyone must navigate the same crowded streets. Vendors shout for attention. Their voices rise and fall in a practiced rhythm, calling out prices, quality, and origin. Fresh oranges, spices from India, silk from the East. Only today, each claim competes with the next. Sounds overlap, creating a dense tapestry of noise that fills every alley and square. A newcomer might find it overwhelming, but those born into this world hear signals where to find the cheapest fish, where cart offers the freshest bread, where the rush of buyers will be lightest. The smells of the market are just as layered. Fish mingles with the rich sweetness of fresh fruit, while the scent of roasting chestnuts drifts lazily through the narrow lanes. The aroma of bread baking in nearby ovens cuts through it all, warm and comforting to some, yet frustratingly out of reach to others. Waste, discarded by the abundant, adds a pungent note, reminding everyone that surplus and scarcity exist side by side. Movement is constant. Buyers weave between carts, examining goods, weighing coins, negotiating prices. Sellers adjust positions to catch the light, to show their wares more favorably, to reach more eyes. Children dart between legs, sometimes begging, sometimes helping, learning the rhythm of trade by observation. Donkeys and carts navigate narrow streets, adding an unpredictable element that must be respected or avoided. The market is also a classroom. The young learn quickly, memorizing the prices, the calls, the faces. They learn where not to step, how to navigate crowds, how to lift a heavy basket without stumbling. The city teaches efficiency here, demanding focus, speed, and awareness. Mistakes are costly, and the sharp eyes of experience. NCD vendors will notice immediately food is both reward and necessity. Those who earn a little can purchase enough for the day, while others simply watch, holding out hope for leftovers or kindness. The market is not forgiving. It is a reflection of the city itself, abundant yet unrelenting. Every basket carries possibility and limitation. Every transaction is a tiny negotiation with survival. The richness extends beyond food. Fabrics, trinkets, and imported goods suggest distant lands, bringing a sense of wonder even to those who cannot afford them. A young servant may glance at silks or jewelry with curiosity, imagining a life far from the chores and struggles of their own. For a moment the mind wanders, but the body remembers its duties: water to fetch, chores to complete, errands to run. Dreaming here is fleeting. Crowds form subtle hierarchies. Merchants recognize returning buyers. Those with coin navigate with confidence. Children, animals, and the poor must make space for them. The rhythm of movement is as much about reading the flow of people as it is about avoiding obstacles. One misstep can send baskets tipping or bodies colliding. The river's proximity shapes the market as well. Fishermen bring in their catch early, shouting over the din of commerce. Their nets and baskets are heavy, and their path is shared with those carrying goods of equal importance. Waterways, docks, and streets intersect, creating a choreography of labor, commerce, and survival by midday. The market reaches its peak. Voices grow louder. Bargaining intensifies. Children's shouts echo, blending with merchants' calls. Sunlight catches on metal, on glass, on polished surfaces, glittering like the city's wealth itself. And through it all, the young and poor move with practiced skill, collecting, delivering, carrying, surviving when the first stalls begin to pack away their wares. And the river reflects sunlight back in the streets. The market leaves behind evidence of life fully lived. Footprints, overturned baskets, scraps of food, and faint scents tell the story of a morning spent in motion. Wealth and hunger coexist, intertwining with the sounds and smells that define the heart of Lisbon. The lessons here are clear, though they are learned slowly. Survival requires observation, strength, and timing. Every coin, every bite, every load carried teaches endurance. And even in the midst of riches, hunger remains a constant companion, shaping the way the city moves, breathes, and persists. In Lisbon, the divide between gold and those who carry it is a quiet but constant presence. The city sparkles with wealth. Merchants count coins behind polished counters. Ships dock with treasures from across the oceans, and silk and porcelain are displayed with pride. Yet for every gilded hall there are hands, rough, calloused, and worn, whose labor moves this wealth from port to palace, from ship to market, from street to table. These hands touch gold only briefly, and then enter the work that keeps the city functioning. The contrast is immediate. Inside the houses of the rich, warmth, food, and comfort are abundant. Floors are swept, fires stoked, and meals served promptly. Light falls softly across polished surfaces, reflecting the glow of coins and jewelry. Outside, in the alleys and hills, the laborers navigate uneven stone, carry heavy buckets of water, and fetch goods, feeling the chill of morning seep into their bones. Gold is visible, tantalizingly close, yet unattainable. The young witness this daily. They see how hands that sweat, scrape, and strain make the wealth possible. They watch coins exchanged casually, only to be counted and stored while their own fingers ache from work that rarely results in reward. Yet there is no resentment, only understanding. The city teaches that survival depends not on gold, but on skill, endurance, and obedience. Hands carry what others own, and that is enough. Labor in Lisbon is visible in every corner. At the docks, barrels are unloaded from ships heavy with spices, sugar, and silk. Hands are bruised from ropes and nails, backs bent from lifting. The value of what they carry is immeasurable, yet the reward is small. Merchants pay in coins that will barely cover another day's expenses, while their wares glitter in sunlight, reminders of wealth separated from toil. Inside houses, servants move like shadows, unnoticed except when their absence is felt. They fetch, clean, polish, and prepare performing tasks that allow the wealthy to inhabit spaces of ease and luxury. Every table set, every dish washed, every piece of clothing repaired is a small act of labor that makes gold meaningful. Without hands, gold is inert, untapped, silent. The divide extends beyond comfort. Decisions, privilege, and influence follow gold. Those who possess it can shape the city's course, who is hired, who trades, who rises or falls in favor. The laborers, no matter how skilled, remain observers executing the vision of others. Their proximity grants knowledge, but not power. They move wealth without claiming it. Even in marketplaces, the separation is apparent. Wealthy buyers select goods easily. Their coin counts light compared to the loads carried by vendors and errand runners. Hands touch silks, spices, and porcelain, arranging them for display or transport. The rich admire them, sometimes purchase them, but rarely consider the labor that brought them to view. Each piece of gold spent is supported by unseen effort layered beneath. Luxury. Children who grow up here learn the lesson early. They watch how the world values gold more than sweat, how proximity to wealth does not equal participation in it. They understand hierarchy without words, polished floors above, rough stone below, silk and velvet above, patched linen below, privilege above, labor below. The knowledge settles quietly, shaping attitudes, patience, and ambition, yet hands themselves are resilient. They carry, lift, sweep, and clean day after day, forming strength that gold cannot buy. Fingers learn dexterity and precision. Arms and shoulders develop endurance. Feet navigate hills and alleys with a practiced rhythm. Though the reward may be small, the skill acquired is invaluable, forming a quiet mastery of the city itself. There is a rhythm to the divide. Morning brings labor and movement. Midday, a pause, brief and necessary. Evening, return to shared rooms where straw and stone await. Gold may shine in windows above, but the pulse of the city is carried by hands, steady and unwavering. The contrast is stark, yet the city depends equally on both. Sometimes the divide feels personal. A servant may touch gold accidentally, holding a coin briefly before handing it to its owner. Feel its cold weight and polished surface, then returning it with careful obedience. The sensation is fleeting, a reminder of proximity without possession. The lesson is immediate. Wealth can be held, but it is not yours through this perspective forms. Hands know their value not in comparison to gold, but in their necessity. They shape the city quietly, invisibly, yet without them wealth is meaningless. The house cannot function, the markets cannot operate, the ships cannot unload. Gold may dazzle the eyes, but hands sustain life. By nightfall, the contrast is evident in every home and alley. Windows glow with the light of prosperity, tables are set, fires burn warmly. Outside, bodies stretch tiredly, muscles aching, hands still raw from the day's work. Both exist simultaneously, intertwined but unequal, dependent yet divided. And so, life continues. Gold glimmers, hands endure. The young watch, learn, and move between the two worlds, understanding early that the measure of a person here is rarely found in coin, but in the work that allows coin to circulate. The city is built on this balance, a tension between shine and sweat, between wealth and the hands that carry it. Even before the city fully awakens, the churches of Lisbon gleam with a brilliance that seems almost unnatural. Their gilded altars, polished statues, and painted ceilings catch the early sunlight and scatter it across the streets, reflecting a wealth that few homes can ever hope to contain. Here, faith, art, and gold converge, creating spaces that dazzle the eye and humble the body in equa. At a measure, the streets lead naturally toward these sacred places. Their towers rise above the tiled rooftops, domes curving against the sky like deliberate punctuation. Bells, long silent in the pre-dawn hours, will soon toll their sound, rolling over the city, marking the day and calling the faithful. Even before the first peal, the buildings themselves command attention. Marble steps, worn smooth by generations of worshippers, invite passage. Doors of heavy wood, carved with symbols both intricate and familiar, stand open, promising both shelter and awe. Inside, light behaves differently than it does outside. Candles, torches, and sunlight through stained glass transform simple dust into sparkling motes suspended in air. Every flicker reflects off gilded statues of saints, painted frescoes, and intricate carvings. The space feels alive with gold, not just metal, but light itself captured and amplified, reaching across the pews and onto stone floors. Even the humblest visitor feels small in comparison, dwarfed by the scale and purpose of the structures. The smell is distinct, a mixture of incense, candle smoke, and the faint hint of aged wood and stone. It lingers in robes and hair long after leaving, marking the body as having entered a place set apart for ordinary life. For those who live among the city's wealth, the churches are both a reminder and a contrast. They display abundance that many cannot possess in their daily homes, yet they belong to everyone, regardless of wealth or status. Choirs and organs will soon fill the air with sound, though for now the buildings are quiet, waiting. The quiet emphasizes the weight of space, the grandeur of ceilings high enough to lose sight of the rafters, and the precision of mosaics and carvings meant to inspire reflection. Light, shadow, and space are carefully arranged, guiding eyes upward, coaxing thoughts beyond the narrow alleys and stone floors of the neighborhoods below. Even in areas of the city where laborers live, the churches tower above. Their beauty is a constant reminder of the contrast between public splendor and private modesty. While homes are cramped, cold, and functional, churches exist to amaze and uplift. Each gilded surface, each polished stone, each intricate relief is an assertion that faith and the wealth supporting it belongs to the city collectively. Even as individual fortunes remain distant, the streets leading to the churches are filled with life. Even before the first service, vendors set up small stalls outside, offering candles, prayer beads, and simple foods. The sound of clattering hooves, carts, and voices rises and falls, mingling with the distant river. For those walking past, the churches are visual beacons, guiding both the faithful and the curious toward these spaces of light. Inside, footsteps echo differently. The stone absorbs and amplifies movement, marking presence and proximity. People kneel or pause in contemplation, the contrast between their quiet gestures and the grand architecture sharpening the mind's focus. Even servants from the surrounding neighborhoods feel the shift upon entering, noticing the comfort, the warmth, and the beauty in every corner. Windows are more than decoration, they are guides for the light, casting colored patterns that move slowly across floors and walls as the sun rises. Every stained glass pane tells a story, a saint, a miracle, a moral. Light brings these stories to life, moving across faces, floors, and pews, connecting history, wealth, and devotion. Candles flicker in the gentle drafts that wander through open doors, casting shadows that stretch along the stone. The effect is quiet and meditative, drawing attention to both the grandiose and the minute. Every carved detail, every polished surface seems intended to teach patience, observation, and reverence. The sense of scale is deliberate. Nave, transept, and altar are arranged to inspire awe. Even the smallest chapels within a larger church are intricate, gilded, and polished, suggesting wealth and devotion in equal measure. A visitor cannot help but notice the difference between their daily living spaces and these interiors. where comfort and beauty are layered without concern for labor or scarcity outside. The churches cast long shadows across cobblestones and stairways. Their presence is a quiet authority, reminding the city that some forms of wealth and beauty are not personal but collective. They are landmarks, both literal and spiritual, marking the city's identity as much as any port or marketplace. For the young and the poor, the churches represent both aspiration and reality. They are places of wonder, and yet they are reminders of distance, the brilliance they cannot replicate in their homes, the warmth that is not theirs to enjoy fully. Still, every visit, every glimpse through doors or windows, shapes perception, teaching humility, awe, and endurance. As the day advances, the churches come alive with ritual, sound, and movement. Light shifts, shadows deepen, incense swirls, and worshippers fill the spaces. For those outside, the glow of gilded altars, the sound of organ pipes, and the scent of incense mark the passage of time, offering continuity in a city that otherwise moves in constant motion. By the time laborers have completed early errands and climbs, the churches have already shaped the rhythm of the city. They are touchstones, both physical and spiritual, reminders of what wealth can create and how it can inspire. Even in the humblest neighborhoods, the glow from their golden interiors reaches outward, illuminating streets, alleys, and mines. Alike in Lisbon, houses may be cramped, streets narrow, and work unrelenting, but the churches shine brighter than any home. They speak of wealth, faith, and human creativity on a scale few can ignore. They are monuments, not just to God, but to the city itself, a city of contrasts, where beauty and hardship exist side by side, each defining the other. The city changes when the sun dips below the horizon. Streets that were alive with voices, footsteps, and commerce during the day now settle into a rhythm quieter, slower, and yet no less alive. Lisbon at night is a city of shadows and lanterns, where shapes twist along narrow alleys, stone steps disappear into darkness, and the flickering light of oil lamps creates movement that is at once real and imagined. Lanterns sway gently from hooks outside doors and along streets, their light warm but unreliable. They illuminate portions of alleys, leaving the rest in shadow. The effect is disorienting at first. Walls stretch longer, steps seem steeper, and corners conceal more than they reveal. Yet for those born here, the interplay of light and shadow is familiar. Eyes learn to read the darkness, to anticipate where a step will land, where a load must be balanced, and where the next obstacle will appear. Sounds change as well. Daytime shouts and calls are replaced by whispers, the clip-clop of distant horses, the shuffle of late workers, and the occasional clatter of a falling object from a window above. Every noise is sharper, more deliberate, and every echo carries farther in the narrow alleys. Those who walk the streets after dark move differently, cautiously, attuned to the rhythm of the city as much as to their own shadowed path. Lanterns cast both clarity and mystery. A small circle of light reveals the uneven stone beneath feet, the crack in wall, the patch of slick moss. Beyond that circle lies uncertainty, the unknown territory where imagination and danger merge. Children with errands run quickly, their small lanterns bobbing in the dark. Servants carry water or provisions home, balancing their loads with care. Even the simplest task demands full attention. The smell of the city intensifies at night. Cool air carries scents that were masked during the day. The damp of stone alleys, the lingering smoke of fires, the faint odor of waste from upper windows. Bread ovens still release warmth and yeast, mingling with these other, harsher smells. Every inhalation tells a story, a lesson in anticipation. warning, and awareness. Shadows are not merely absence of light. They shift and merge with the movements of people, animals, and hanging laundry. A door left ajar, a cart slowly rolling, or the rustle of a cat creates illusions of motion that may be real or may be imagined. The young and inexperienced must learn to differentiate between the two, a skill that can mean safety or accident, success or failure in a night spent navigating the city. The hills themselves feel different at night. Steps that were obstacles during the day become traps for the inattentive. Stones slick with dew or rain. The climb up or down takes longer, requiring attention to balance, rhythm, and the weight of whatever is being carried. Lanterns provide guidance, but the distance they illuminate is limited. Each slope demands the memory of countless previous journeys. Instinct, idly guiding the feet where the eyes cannot see. The city is never silent. Even in the deepest shadow, life persists. Cats fight over scraps. Dogs bark at distant intruders. Doors creak on hinges. Occasionally, a shout pierces the quiet, whether playful, angry, or urgent. Residents call across streets or alleys, warning of danger or simply announcing presence. Every sound is amplified by the narrow spaces, every echo carrying a message of caution and awareness. Inside the houses, light is warmer, quieter, and less chaotic. Families gather near hearths. Meals are shared, and small lamps illuminate simple routines. Yet even here, the city outside influences the night. Windows are kept partially closed to prevent drafts or, worse, unexpected visitors. The glow of lanterns outside creates patterns that dance across floors and walls, blending reality and imagination. In the minds of the watchers, for those moving through the streets, time takes on a different shape. Night slows motion, yet heightens perception. Every step is measured, every glance counts. Shadows reveal and conceal, smells inform and alert, and the faint illumination of a lantern provides both guidance and misdirection. It is a careful balance, one mastered only through repetition and attention. In marketplaces now emptied of daytime noise, the lingering sense of spices and bread seem more pronounced, drifting across empty stalls and darkened alleys. The memory of day's abundance contrasts sharply with the current stillness, creating a sense of tension that hums beneath every quiet footstep. Even the river contributes to the night's atmosphere. Moonlight and lantern reflections shimmer on the surface, blending with the occasional shout from the docks or the scrape of a boat. The water moves quietly, carrying sounds and smells from one part of the city to another, connecting the darkened hills and streets in a subtle web of life. Children on errands or exploring after dark learn quickly how to adapt. The city teaches them, sometimes through near misses or startled reactions, the importance of attentiveness. Every step, every glance, every decision carries consequence. By observing the dance of light and shadow, listening to the city's quieter symphony, they learn rhythm, patience, and caution. By the time midnight arrives, the city settles into deeper shadows. Some lanterns gutter and die. Footsteps become sporadic. The air chills and movement slows, though it never stops entirely. Even in this apparent calm, Lisbon breathes, a city alive in ways visible and invisible. Nights here are not merely absence of day. They are a continuation of life, reframed by light, shadow, sound, and scent. The interplay of elements transforms familiar streets into a living puzzle, a test of awareness, endurance, and instinct. For those who walk the hills, alleys, and plazas after dusk, the lessons of the night are as vital as those learned in sunlight, shaping survival, perception, and the understanding of a city that never truly rests, sleep comes slowly in Lisbon. For those who labor through long days of carrying water, climbing hills, or serving in crowded households, the night offers little more than a brief reprieve. Dreams appear, yes, but they are often confined by the limits of experience, shaped by necessity, and rarely wander far from the realities of the city. Here, even imagination bows to survival. In the small rooms shared by servants, straw-stuffed mattresses creak under the weight of tired bodies. The blankets are thin, scratchy, and unable to hold warmth through the chill of the October air. Every rustle of movement, every draught slipping through cracks in the walls keeps one tethered to the immediate environment. Comfort is fleeting, and the mind, even in rest, cannot wander freely. Dreams begin as fragile fragments. A child might imagine distant lands glimpsed only through a merchant's tale, a piece of imported silk, but these visions quickly return to the familiar. Narrow alleys, slippery stone steps, the rhythm of chores and the weight of a bucket of water creep in, reshaping flights of imagination into reflections of daily life. Even wonder is measured. Outside, the city does not sleep. Sounds filter in through windows, the clatter of carts, the low call of a night watchman, the occasional shout or scuffle. Even in the darkness, the rhythm of Lisbon persists. Every noise serves as a reminder that rest is temporary, that vigilance is necessary. The young learn to integrate these intrusions into dreams, creating mental landscapes that are both fantastical and tethered to reality. The smells of the night seep into sleep as well. Damp stone, lingering smoke, and faint odors from the river mingle with bread, herbs, and spices carried home by those returning late. Even in slumber, the senses record, catalogue, and influence the direction of dreams. Scenes shift. A marketplace in dream may resemble the one seen today, or a hill may twist and turn, just as the alarm district does in waking life. In some dreams, the city becomes a stage. Tasks repeat with exaggeration. Steps are steeper, loads heavier, alleys longer. Dreams often mimic the labor of the day, allowing the mind to process both experience and anticipation. Even hope is small and grounded. A warm hearth, a piece of bread, or a brief moment of rest becomes the focus of imagined adventure. Rarely, a dream may push further. A glimpse of the sea beyond the river, a stretch of open sky above the city's rooftop, or a ship arriving with treasures too distant to touch offers a spark of wonder. But these are fleeting, quickly pulled back by the gravity of the familiar, the hills, alleys, chores, and streets that define life. Lisbon's boundaries are as much mental as physical, shaping the edges of imagination. Even the wealthy, when asleep, share a tether to reality. Luxury allows comfort and warmth, but their minds often wander through worry, ledgers, business, and obligations. Dreams may travel farther than those of servants, but even they are rarely completely free, constrained by responsibilities and expectations. The city shapes everyone, in life and in sleep. Children's dreams are shorter, fragmented, and more immediate. The weight of the day presses on them, and imagination must compete with fatigue and necessity. A single interruption, a cough, a creaking floorboard, a shout from outside can shift a dream completely, replacing imagined landscapes with immediate awareness. Yet in these brief episodes, creativity persists. Even constrained, the mind finds tiny corridors of escape, tiny flights beyond the stone wall of the house. Servants often share rooms, and the collective presence shapes sleep as well. Breathing, movement, and whispered conversation bleed into the subconscious, influencing the contours of dreams. A friend's sigh may inspire a new twist of fantasy, or the snore of another may pull attention back to waking awareness. Sleep is communal and dreams are quietly negotiated between bodies pressed close in. The small space, in some ways, the confinement of dreams mirrors the city itself. Streets wend unpredictably, hills rise sharply, and alleys narrow. Life moves within defined paths, dictated by labor, class, and circumstance. Dreamscapes mirror these restrictions. Freedom exists, but only within the bounds of experience and expectation. Even imagination conforms to the architecture of reality, yet there is quiet value in these cons. Trained dreams. They allow reflection, rehearsal, and subtle planning. A servant may imagine a more efficient route to the fountain, a safer way to carry water, or a clever solution to a daily task. Even in sleep, the mind rehearses survival, preparing for the day ahead. Dreams, though limited in scope, serve practical purpose. When dawn approaches, dreams dissolve slowly, leaving traces on waking thought. The memory of a lifted bucket, a slippery step, or a flicker of gold light may linger, blending with fragments of imagined voyages. Sleep transitions seamlessly into action, reinforcing the cycle of learning, endurance, and awareness. That defines life in Lisbon. In Lisbon, dreams rarely wander far from the city that shapes them. They are tethered to stone, water, labor, and light. Yet, even within these boundaries, the imagination finds space to explore, to test limits, and to process the relentless rhythm of a city alive at all hours. The lessons of night prepare the mind for the demands of day, ensuring that even sleep contributes to survival, growth, and understanding. In a world that moves unceasingly, Lisbon is a city that stands proudly on hills, overlooking the river, glimmering with wealth and life. But beneath its bustling streets, crowded marketplaces, and gleaming churches lies a reality that is less certain, less enduring, and far more fragile than most imagine. The foundations of this city are uneasy, built on soil that shifts, buildings that lean, and the ever-present threat of nature's power. To walk its streets is to witness both human ambition and the quiet tension that holds it all together. The city's hills rise sharply, each one layered with centuries of construction. Stone walls bear the weight of houses stacked closely together, their timbers interlocked in patterns that are sometimes ingenious, sometimes precarious. Streets twist and narrow, a reflection of centuries of adaptation, but also of necessity. Builders long ago prioritized space and proximity over stability, and though generations have added reinforcements, the hills themselves never stopped moving. Alleyways reveal the strain. Cracks run through stone and plaster, subtle reminders of the tension beneath. Steps are uneven, some worn smooth by generations of footsteps, others newly repaired yet still slanted from years of settling. Water, carried daily from fountains or collected from rain, seeps into foundations, softening earth and loosening mortar. Each rainfall carries the city closer to its breaking point, though the residents rarely think of it in such terms. They move carefully, unconsciously negotiate. A landscape that is both alive and unsteady. Houses lean toward one another in ways that are charming to outsiders, but telling to those who live here. Timbers groan with age and pressure. Walls bulge subtly where foundations have shifted. Roofs tilt, patched with whatever material was at hand. Despite appearances, every building is a negotiation between man hands and natural forces, a daily compromise that allows life to continue. The streets themselves carry the story of centuries, layers of stone, wood, and plaster, each added. Without full knowledge of what lies below, even the riverfront contributes to the unease. Ships dock against piers built on soil prone to shifting, and tides rise with an unpredictability that threatens both commerce and structure. Waterways that sustain trade also erode foundations, carrying sediment away from under walls or depositing it unevenly. The city thrives because of its river, yet it is also at its mercy. Every day, is a balance between opportunity and risk in neighborhoods like the Alarm, the oldest parts of the city. The signs of fragility are most evident. Narrow passages twist and stairways rise steeply, often without guardrails or support. Older buildings lean at angles that might seem dangerous, yet they have survived through generations of repair, adaptation, and careful attention. Those who have lived here all their lives navigate these hazards instinctively, understanding that every misstep could have consequences beyond the obvious. The knowledge of instability extends to the residents' daily routines. Heavy loads are carried carefully, avoiding sudden jolts to the stone floors. Water barrels are lifted and lowered with caution, steps counted and retraced mentally. Even leisure is tempered by awareness. Children play in courtyards, but always within sight of stable walls or supper. Rightive railings. The city shapes behavior as much as the residents shape it, a quiet partnership between human ingenuity and natural uncertainty. Churches, gilded and imposing, stand as testaments to ambition, yet they too rely on foundations that are far from secure. Architects layered stone upon stone, sometimes on shifting soil, sometimes atop older, weakened structures. Their beauty belies the effort required to maintain them, the constant repairs, and the vigilance necessary to prevent collapse. The gleam of gold does not mask the underlying tension. It simply distracts from it. Markets and streets, where life is most vibrant, also betray subtle instability. Stalls lean on walls, carts roll across uneven stone, and narrow passages magnify small miscalculations. Foot traffic, water barrels, and animals all contribute to daily stress on structures that were never designed for constant motion. In a city built on uneasy foundations, even ordinary activity requires constant adaptation, yet this fragility is part of Lisbon's character. The city survives because its residents have learned to live with imbalance, to anticipate shifts, and to respond quickly to hazards. Skill and experience are as important as strength or wealth. Even children understand intuitively that stones may move, timbers may creak, and steps may give under weight. They develop a rhythm with the city, a subtle awareness of its pulse, learning balance, timing, and caution without conscious thought. Rain and weather add another layer of unpredictability. Storms can flood streets, wash away loose soil, and test the integrity of every structure. Yet life continues. Merchants persist. Children still run errands, and residents climb stairs, hauling water and goods despite the risk. In this city, adaptation is survival, and survival is taught from a young age. The city's unease is not merely physical. It mirrors social structures as well. Wealth is concentrated, comfort rare, and opportunity limited. The contrast between riches and labor, gold and hands, reflects the instability that runs beneath the surface. Just as buildings rely on careful attention to remain upright, social life depends on observation, skill, and endurance. One misstep can have cascading consequences, affecting lives, livelihoods, and even safety. At night, the city's unease becomes more palpable. Shadows stretch across uneven streets, lanterns flicker, and steps hide imperfections beneath dim light. The combination of darkness and fragile foundations demands heightened attention. The young navigate carefully, guided by instinct honed over years of living amidst uncertainty. The streets, alleys, and stairways are alive with lessons whispering caution to anyone who will listen. And yet, despite this instability, Lisbon endures. Wealth flows in from distant lands, markets bustle, churches shine, and life continues. The city thrives on a delicate balance, a tension between human ambition and the restless earth beneath it. Its very survival is a testament to ingenuity, resilience, and the quiet determination of generations who learned to live in a place that demands constant awareness. Lisbon's foundations may be uneasy, but its heart beats steadily. Streets twist, walls lean, steps slope unexpectedly, and the river ebbs and flows. Still, life moves forward, shaped by caution, endurance, and skill. Every building, every alley, every stairway carries the weight of history and the mark of those who keep it upright. In a city built on uneasy foundations, survival is not a guarantee, it is a practice honed daily and mastered only by those willing to adapt. The city of Lisbon, in the quiet months of 1754, carried itself with a deceptive ease. The hills rose sharply, the alleys twisted, the river shimmered, and the houses leaned just enough to whisper of fragility, but for now nothing seemed amiss. There was a rhythm to the city that its residents trusted: early morning chores, the clatter of carts, the cries of vendors, and the call of a guave. As buckets of water moved through the streets, life flowed like the river, steady and unremarkable if one ignored the uneasy foundations beneath feet and walls. Mornings began predictably. Servants rose from straw-stuffed beds, wool blankets scratching against their skin. They carried water, lit fires, and prepared the household for the day ahead. Markets opened, ships unloaded their treasures, and the sound of footsteps echoed across worn stone. Children ran errands, apprentices began their lessons, and merchants counted coin. The wealth of Lisbon was evident in every corner, yet so was the labor that sustained it in neighborhoods like the Alarm, the oldest in the city. Streets wound tightly around buildings built over centuries. Steps rose abruptly, alleys narrowed unexpectedly, and the hum of daily life filled the air. Yet this morning there was a strange stillness threading through the bustle. Perhaps it was the way the river's surface reflected sunlight more perfectly than usual, or the manner in which the first smoke from ovens hung motionless in the air. Even the smell of bread, fish, and salt seemed sharper, more deliberate, carrying a subtle warning that went largely unnoticed. Inside the grander houses, life continued as normal, though a careful observer might notice small anomalies. Timbers creaked slightly longer, walls seemed to lean just a little further, and lamps burned with a steadiness that felt almost too perfect. Servants, unaware of the subtle hints, moved through rooms with practiced efficiency. Gold gleamed on counters, silks were folded neatly, and the air carried a polished sense of order. The city, at least on the surface, appeared flawless. Outside, the markets hummed with life. Vendors arranged fruits, vegetables, spices, and imported goods with meticulous care. Coins exchanged hands, children darted through crowds, and laborers carried heavy loads without pause. Even the riverfront seemed normal. Ships docked, sails flapped in the wind, and the water lapped gently against piers. Yet beneath the routine, an invisible tension lingered, subtle and unacknowledged, like a faint tremor that barely disturbs the surface of the earth. In the streets, footsteps echoed differently this morning. People moved with awareness, though they could not yet name the source. Dogs barked less, cats prowled more cautiously, and the alleys felt narrower than before. The city, as though holding its breath, waited. Those who walked its hills and passages carried out their duties as always, but even the most routine task, hauling water, climbing stairs, delivering goods, was framed by an unspoken anticipation, a whisper of unease in the back of the mind. Even the churches, shining brighter than any home, seemed to hold a quiet tension. Bells remained silent, candles flickered more intensely, and the gleam of gold and gilded surfaces appeared almost exaggerated in the early morning light. Worshippers moved about with reverence, but the air car ride a subtle heaviness, a suggestion that even these sacred spaces, so steady and unchanging, might soon be tested. Children, too, sensed the difference, though their understanding was instinctual rather than conscious. Games were quieter, laughter tempered. Errands were completed with an unusual care. The young observed, processed, and internalized the rhythm of a city that felt just slightly off its familiar pulse. The lessons of navigating Lisbon's steps, shadows, sound, and smell remained essential, but now they were infused with an extra layer of attentiveness. By midday, the calm persisted. Markets were busy, streets were filled, and the hum of daily life continued without interruption. Yet, in the subtleties, the way timbers groaned, the river lapped, the wind shifted, there was a message, unnoticed by most. The foundations, both literal and metaphorical, were stretched to a limit. The city had existed for centuries atop uneven soil, unsteady hills, and centuries of accumulated labor, and now, imperceptibly, the stage for change was being set. For the young and observant, the city's rhythm carried hidden signals. Every small creak of a floorboard, every shift in a wall, every unusually strong breeze suggested that something beyond ordinary life was approaching. The daily grind of survival, water carried, steps climbed, goods delivered, was about to collide with forces far beyond human control. Lisbon moved forward, unaware of the event that would redefine the lives of every hour. Hesitant, even the river, usually calm and predictable, seemed to hold its own secret. Its surface reflected sunlight with an unnatural shimmer. Currents shifted subtly, and the sound of water against the docks carried a warning tone. Sailors and dock workers paused briefly, observing patterns they could not explain, a quiet instinct signaling change. Yet life pressed on. Work could not stop, errands could not be delayed, and the city had learned to adapt daily to countless small disruptions. As evening approached, the calm grew more pronounced. Lanterns were lit, shadows stretched long across uneven streets, and alleys seemed to hold their breath. The smells of evening bread, smoke, damp stone mingled in a complex tapestry, carrying hints of both comfort and tension. Families prepared for rest, merchants balanced ledgers, and laborers returned to their shared rooms. The city rested, but only superficially. Beneath its surface, the fragile equilibrium held by centuries of work and vigilance was on the verge of being tested. In these quiet hours, Lisbon taught an unspoken lesson. Even a city that appears stable, prosperous, and orderly is vulnerable. Wealth, gold, labor, and laborers coexist on foundations, both physical and social, that are rarely perfect. The calm before change is deceptive. It lulls residents into trust, while the thread, holding everything together, strain quietly. And so the city waited. Windows glowed with lamplight. Lanterns swayed in the gentle evening breeze, and the streets, alleys, and hills remained alive with shadows. The rhythm of life continued, measured and deliberate, yet underlying. It all was a tension impossible to ignore once it had been felt. Lisbon, magnificent and fragile, poised on the brink, prepared unknowingly for a moment that would alter everything. The calm before everything changed was not silent. It was patient, subtle, and deliberate. It whispered through alleys, danced across stone steps, and shimmered on river waters. Those who sensed it, even in small ways, carried a quiet awareness into sleep, errands, and labor, unknowingly bracing themselves for a day when the city's rhythm, its foundation, and its life would be forever transformed. Lisbon, as it existed in 1754, lives on now only in memory, in stories, and in the shadows of history. The city that rose from 7 hills, cradled the wealth of empires, and carried countless lives on its narrow streets, no longer exists as it once did. Today, what remains are echoes, the scent of salt and spice on the river, the faint creak of timbers long replaced, and the stories whispered through generations. To remember Lisbon is to remember a city that was magnificent, fragile, and alive in every breath of its air. The hills, once crowded with tightly packed homes and winding alleys, held secrets of countless lives. Children running errands, servants hauling water, merchants counting coins, all moved in rhythm with the pulse of the city. Streets, twisted unpredictor, fly, carrying both opportunity and risk. Every step told a story of survival, of ingenuity, of human persistence. Those who walked the hills and alleys learned lessons that cannot be written in books, only remembered in the subtle knowledge of place and experience. Markets, once bursting with goods from across the globe, offered a spectacle of wealth and struggle. Spices, silk, porcelain, and gold glimmered in the sunlight, while children darted between legs and servants carried heavy loads without complaint. Every transaction, every load carried, every coin spent reflected the delicate balance between abundance and labor, between comfort and survival. The memory of these markets carries the scent of oranges, the warmth of ovens, the chatter of buyers and sellers, and the silent endurance of those who made the city move. The churches that shone brighter than homes, gilded and magnificent, offered both awe and contrast. Their beauty, light, and art reminded residents of a grandeur that existed beyond daily toil. Yet even within their walls, the foundations of life in Lisbon were mirrored: devotion, labor, wealth, and fragility coexisting, sometimes in harmony, sometimes in tension. The memory of these sacred spaces is one of light and shadow, of reverence and human striving, a testament to what wealth, belief, and care can achieve together. For those who lived in the city's wealthier houses, life was filled with comfort, meals, and relative ease. But even here, labor shaped the existence. Servants moved through rooms, hauling water, polishing surfaces, and preparing food, their hands carrying the weight of gold that was never theirs. The contrast between riches and work, between privilege and effort, defined Lisbon's rhythm, creating a city where both abundance and hardship existed side by side. And then there were the nights, the shadows, and the lanterns that defined Lisbon when the sun dipped behind its hills. Narrow alleys, uneven steps, flickering lights, and moving shadows created a city alive with caution and awareness. Every creak of a floorboard, every distant shout, every swaying lantern reminded residents of the constant balance between safety and accident, between the known and the unknown. Even sleep offered little escape. Dreams were tethered to streets, hills, and duties, never wandering far from the city that shaped them. Lisbon's foundations, both literal and metaphorical, were uneasy. Houses leaned, walls shifted, and hills moved imperceptibly. Rain and river tides tested every construction, and yet life continued. The city endured because its residents adapted, navigating both the physical challenges of the land and the social divides that shaped everyday existence. To remember Lisbon is to remember ingenuity born from necessity, resilience forged through labor, and beauty achieved despite fragility. The world lost this city in ways both dramatic and subtle. Natural forces, earthquakes, fires, and time transformed it, erasing tears, toppling buildings, and scattering lives. Yet memory preserves the pulse of the city, the rhythm of water carried from fountain, the creak of timber under heavy loads, the chatter of markets, the glow of gilded churches, and the subtle lessons of survival learned by every child, servant, and laborer. To remember Lisbon is also to remember the lessons it offers. Wealth alone does not secure life. Beauty alone does not guarantee safety. Survival depends on observation, skill, and resilience. Community, labor, and careful adaptation form the foundation upon which any city thrives. The gold, silk, and spices may be gone, but the human story, the endurance, ingenuity, and quiet persistence remains. Even in memory, Lisbon is vivid. The river glints in sunlight, the hills rise steeply, and alleys twist in ways that defy simple navigation. Children run errands, servants carry water, and merchants haggle in marketplaces that smell of bread, fish, and spices. Shadows dance beneath lanterns, churches gleam with gold, and the city hums with life that once was. The details, the sounds, the smells, the textures linger longer than any stone or timber preserved. In the minds of those who imagine it, the city that the world lost was never perfect. Its streets were uneven, its foundations unsteady, and its wealth unevenly distributed. But it was alive, vibrant, and full of stories that spanned from river to hilltop, from servant to noble, from labor to leisure. Each moment, each breath, each sea, whole step mattered. Its charm and character were born from the tension between beauty and fragility, comfort and hardship, light and shadow. Remembering Lisbon is also remembering the human experience woven into its streets. Every hand that carried water, every child who ran errands, every merchant who counted coins, every family who lived with uncertainty, all are part of the city's heartbeat. Their labor, their resilience, their laughter, and even their suffering create a memory more enduring than the building themselves. Even today, when walking the modern streets, one can sense the layers of history beneath stone and tile. The hills, the river, the rhythm of movement, they echo the lives of those who lived, loved, worked, and dreamed here. The city that once was continues to teach those who pause to remember, offering lessons about endurance, adaptation, and the delicate balance of human life. Lisbon was more than its wealth, more than its churches, more than its hills or river. It was a living organism, sustained by labor, courage, and ingenuity. To remember it is to honor the countless hands and hearts that shaped it, the lessons it quietly offered, and the beauty that emerged even from fragile foundations. And so, though the world lost this city, its story endures. Its streets, alleys, markets, churches, and hills live on in memory, imagination, and history. Every creek, every lantern flicker, every splash of water from the fountain is a whisper of life once lived. To remember Lisbon is to remember a city of contrasts, a city of life, a city whose pulse still resonates for those willing to listen. Lisbon, in all its wealth, fragility, and vibrance, lives on not in stone or gold, but in the stories that carry it forward, forever remembered by a world that can no longer walk its streets but can still feel its heartbeat,